Welcome to yet another session where you and I sit down and practice some more questions, and the focus that we have today is going to be on inferences. So यार इस पे फोकस इसलिए कर रहे हैं क्योंकि ये क्वेश्चन टाइप काफी frequently आता है. So welcome to this session where you and I will sit down together and make ourselves better, sharper at critical reasoning questions. As usual, we are going to work on it together. It is not exactly going to be a spectator sport. So make sure that you're bringing your brain into the game and are also solving the questions. But before I take you to the questions, when we say identify the inference, you know, all those questions that say which of the following can be inferred, which of the following is best supported, which of the following has been implied by the author. Well, this is the question type that you and I are talking about. So what exactly do we mean by an inference? So to keep it short, and considering that we have been working on these for a while now, an inference is basically a conclusion, right? But the one which is unstated. In other words, whatever is there in the paragraph, we simply treat it as some information supplied to us. Every answer choice claims to be a valid conclusion on the basis of that particular piece of information. Our job is to go ahead and check whether the conclusion is speaking the truth or a lie. Okay, so that's what identify the inference questions are essentially all about. So let us start. Here is the first question on the screen for you. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video right here, answer the question, and once you are done, come back so that you and I can sit down and talk. Ready? Let's go. So the information given, if accurate, provides the strongest support for which of the following hypotheses? Okay, so we are looking for something that supports one of these following hypotheses. So it is another way of asking us for an inference. So let's go ahead, read the paragraph carefully, and then we will go ahead and evaluate the options. So duck-billed dinosaurs, like today's monitor lizards, had particularly long tails which they could whip at considerable speed. So there are these two entities. You have duck-billed dinosaurs and you have monitor lizards. Now you know it, I know it, that dinosaurs are extinct. They are no longer in existence, but we are comparing these two animals. Monitor lizards exist. We are saying that these dinosaurs are a bit like monitor lizards with respect to their tail. Moreover, they could whip that tail at considerable speed. So that's another factor that we know. Now, monitor lizards use their tails to strike predators. So if somebody were to attack a monitor lizard, that lizard will use its tail to, in a way, strike back, hit back at the predator. However, although duckbill tails were otherwise very similar to those of monitor lizards, the duckbill's tail bones were proportionately much thinner and thus more delicate. So now we are talking about a difference. Difference क्या है? Monitor lizard की भी tail है, इसकी भी है. Both of them can use their tail to whip. They can whip their tail at considerable speeds. But एक difference है क्या? Duckbill's tail bones were proportionately much thinner. तो यार इनकी जो बोन्स हैं वो थिनर है. बोन्स अगर थिनर होंगी तो ऑब्वियसली वो डेलिकेट होंगी, और कोई भी चीज अगर डेलिकेट हो जाती है तो इट बिकम्स प्रोन टू ब्रेकिंग. So you need to use it more carefully. Moreover, to ward off their proportionately much larger predators, duckbills would have had to whip their tails considerably faster than monitor lizards do. So दूसरा चैलेंज हमको क्या मिल रहा है कि इनके जो predators थे वो they were much larger than the predators of monitor lizards. तो अब अगर उनको ward off करना है, in other words, if you want to avoid harm from your predators, you need to move your tail at a considerably higher speed as compared to the speeds generated by monitor lizards. So that's what we know. Now let's start evaluating. A, if duckbills whipped their tails faster than monitor lizards do, the duckbill's tail would have been effective at warding off the duckbill's fiercest predators. What do you think? So, if duckbills whip their tails faster than monitor lizards do, अच्छा इनको fast करना पड़ता, the duckbill's tails would have been effective at warding off the duckbill's fiercest predators. तो देखो, जब भी आप किसी predator पे अपना tail whip करते हैं, what do? You are striking. Now, if you strike your predator, is there a guarantee that your predator will back off and will no longer attack you? The predator can still try, the predator can still continue. So, we cannot be sure of the fact that if they move them at a faster pace, they will definitely be effective. They will increase their probability of warding off the attack, yes, but will they always succeed? We can't be very sure. So the label that I will apply to A is can't say. Okay, let's move on. Duckbills use their tails to strike predators and their tailbones were frequently damaged from the impact. We don't know. Did they do that? Maybe. Were their tails damaged? Maybe. We don't know for sure. They are extinct, so we don't have any way to figure that out anyway. See, using their tails was not the only means duckbills had for warding off predators. So we're saying, अच्छा ये tail से strike करना एक तरीका था, उसके अलावा इनके पास और तरीके भी थे क्या? Data insufficient हमें नहीं पता, हो सकता है रहे हो सकता है ना रहे हों. We have nothing to suggest either way. Duckbills were at much greater risk of being killed by a predator than monitor lizards are. Once again, we know that they had predators, we know that their size were proportionately larger, but were they at a greater risk as compared to monitor lizards? Shayad nahi. So again, it cannot be determined and therefore can't say. Let's look at E. The tails of duckbills, if used to ward off predators, would have been more likely than the tails of monitor lizards to sustain damage from the impact. अब देखो, मैं अगर A से कंपेयर करूं, A में certainty आ रही है, right? B में certainty आ रही है, tailbones were frequently damaged. यहाँ पे certainty नहीं है, यहाँ पे comparison कर रहे हैं कि यार अगर ऐसा करें तो इसके टेल के डैमेज होने की प्रोबेबिलिटी मॉनिटर लिजर्ड के टेल के डैमेज होने की प्रोबेबिलिटी से ज्यादा है, और वो हम इन्फर कर सकते हैं क्योंकि their tail bones were proportionately much thinner and thus more delicate. तो अगर इनकी बोन्स ज्यादा डेलिकेट हैं तो संभावना probability of their getting damaged is obviously higher. ये कंपैरिजन हमें दिया हुआ है, इसलिए E जो है वो ट्रू है, and because E is true, we will go ahead and mark E as our answer to this particular question. राइट? सो अब वही ना, लेबल कर दिया ट्रू फॉल्स कांट से, 4 कांट से एक ट्रू है, तो ऑब्वियसली जो ट्रू है वो आंसर हो ही जाएगा. लेट्स मूव ओवर टू आवर नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. सो क्वेश्चन नंबर 2 इज ऑन योर स्क्रीन. व्हाई डोंट यू हिट पॉज, आंसर द क्वेश्चन एंड देन ज्वाइन मी फॉर अ डिस्कशन. Okay, so are you ready? देखना शुरू करें. Let's go ahead. The information in the passage above most supports which of the following conclusion? बहुत straight forward question, STEM कोई घुमा फिरा के बात नहीं बोली. Identify the inference है, हमें सीधा सीधा पता चल रहा है. So let's begin with the paragraph. Compact fluorescent light bulbs are growing in market share as a replacement for the standard incandescent light bulb. तो आपको पता नहीं ध्यान होगा कि नहीं होगा, मगर आज से 15-20 साल पहले तक वो नॉर्मल वाले फिलामेंट वाले बल्ब ज़्यादा चला करते थे, उनकी जगह फिर CFLs आ गए. वो बीच में एक स्टेज थी, अब आजकल ऑब्वियसली LEDs आ गए. सो अब हमें CFL के बारे में क्या पता चल रहा है इसमें कि यार दे आर ग्रोइंग इन मार्केट शेयर एज रिप्लेसमेंट फॉर द स्टैंडर्ड इनकैंडेसेंट लाइट बल्ब. यानी कि अब अगर किसी का ये लाइट बल्ब खराब होता है तो धीरे धीरे देयर इज अ हायर नंबर ऑफ पीपल एज कंपेयर टू अर्लियर who replace that bulb with a CFL. However, an even newer technology is emerging, the light emitting diode or LED bulb. Like CFL bulbs, LED bulbs are energy efficient and they can last around 50,000 hours, about 5 times as long as most CFL bulbs. Yet a single LED bulb costs much more than 5 CFL bulbs. तो basically देखो हमें क्या पता चल रहा है, LED would last 5 times as compared to CFL. अब अगर इसकी कॉस्ट भी 5 टाइम्स हो तो आई थिंक CFL और LED bulbs in terms of their replacement costs are identical. ओके, बट यहां पे हमें क्या पता चल रहा है, LED bulbs cost much more than 5 CFL bulbs. तो यानी कि कम से कम भी when you say much more तो 7-8 CFL bulbs के बराबर पड़ रहा होगा, है ना. तो चलिए देखें. LED bulbs are most likely to be used in locations where light bulbs would be difficult or costly to replace. So what do we know about LED and CFL? Going by this, there is hardly a difference in cost. In fact, in terms of lasting ability, LEDs would of course last 5 times longer, but they would also cost more than 5 CFL bulbs. तो अगर cost वाले terms में मैं देखूं, replacement cost वाले terms में सिर्फ bulb के, तो LEDs are going to be expensive. So normally we would prefer CFLs. But यहाँ पे क्या लिखा है, that there are some locations where it is difficult for you to replace a light bulb or it is costly to replace. तो देखो, हम अगर कहीं भी बल्ब ला करके लगाते हैं, so there are two costs involved, right? एक तो cost of the bulb, right? और दूसरा your cost of replacement. अब ज्यादातर केसेस में रिप्लेसमेंट कॉस्ट कुछ होती नहीं है ना. इमेजिन इफ देयर इज अ बल्ब दैट डाइज इन माय हाउस, आई विल जस्ट गो टू द मार्केट, पिक अप अ बल्ब एंड स्क्रू दैट बल्ब इन माय सेल्फ. सो आई वोंट हैव टू, आई कैन चेंज इट all by myself. I don't have to ask anybody else involved. So cost negligible hai. But imagine that there is a bulb in a building where the ceiling height is 30 feet and there too maybe you need to remove part of the false ceiling and then you can reach the bulb holder. तो उसमें वो कुछ एडिशनल कॉस्ट आ रही है ना, कुछ स्पेशलाइज्ड इक्विपमेंट, कुछ एरिया कट किया जा रहा है, फिर वो लग रहा है. एंड इफ इट इज डिफिकल्ट एंड इफ इट इज कॉस्टली, तो फिर वो कॉस्ट ऐड हो जाएगी. तो ऐसी जगह पे विल वी प्रेफर एलईडी बल्ब्स एज कंपेयर टू अदर बल्ब्स? यस. व्हाई? कि यार नॉर्मली आप सोचेंगे सीएफएल लगा लेते हैं, राइट? लेकिन यहां पर वो बल्ब को चेंज करना मुश्किल है. सो बिकॉज दे लास्ट अबाउट 5 टाइम्स एज लॉन्ग, you'd be able to save on the challenges involved and the cost involved in the replacement. तो ठीक है, उस केस में you can go ahead and give a little bit of premium. On the whole, there is a possibility that you'd end up saving money. क्योंकि अगर आप CFL भी लगाएंगे तो क्या होगा, आपको 5 बार बदलना पड़ेगा. वो 5 बार बदलने की कॉस्ट भी तो जुड़ेगी आपकी साथ में. हाँ, so they may turn out to be cheaper in these scenarios and therefore are they likely to be used in such places? Yes. अच्छा, अगर खाली कॉस्ट होता तो मैं शायद बोलता कि हाँ, इन ऑल प्रोबेबिलिटी यस, बट ये डिफिकल्ट भी तो है. सो इट्स नॉट जस्ट अबाउट कॉस्ट. डिफिकल्टी, इन एवरी डिफिकल्टी इन्वॉल्व्स चैलेंज, एट टाइम्स इवन अ थ्रेट. हाँ, तो उस केस में तो डेफिनेटली लोग ये प्रेफर करेंगे ही. बी, CFL bulbs will need to come down further in price in order to compete with LED bulbs. No, these are already cheaper than LEDs. तो और कितना नीचे जाए इन टर्म्स ऑफ कॉस्ट? तो ऑलरेडी सस्ता पड़ ही रहा है, इवन व्हेन यू कंपेयर द यूज. सो कांट से, आई मीन देयर इज समथिंग दैट वी प्रॉब्ली मिसिंग आउट, अदरवाइज इसमें तो कुछ नहीं लग रहा. सी, एलईडी बल्ब्स आर मोस्ट लाइकली टू बी यूज्ड इन लोकेशंस वेयर देयर इज फ्रीक्वेंट एक्सीडेंटल ब्रेकेज ऑफ बल्ब्स. नहीं यार देखो, if there is a place where there is a frequent accidental breakage of bulbs, then will we prefer LED bulbs? No. What is their advantage? They last 5 times longer, but वो तो natural use में होगा ना. अब accident से थोड़ी ना ये कोई extra protected है. In fact, you're spending 7 times as much as a CFL bulb, and the bulb is anyway going to break frequently, so you are spending more money and you are also missing out on their lifespan which is 5 times longer. तो यहां तो ये करना गलत है in fact. So this is definitely going to be false. ये तो हटा ही दो. D, CFL bulb designs are likely to advance to the point where they can last as long as LED bulbs. Can't say. Nothing in this paragraph that tells us that the lifespan of CFL is increasing. E, LED bulbs are likely to drop in price to the point of being competitive with CFL bulbs. अब देखो, अगर मैं life की बात करूं तो हाँ, that is how technology trends happen. In fact, we have seen that happen in our lives around us. But look at the question. The question says the information in the passage above most supports which of the following. So if I don't bring in that understanding of how technology function from my life, I have no data point to support E. So on the basis of this, this is definitely can't say. So the option which gets best support, the option which is best supported is option A, and therefore that is the one that you and I should go ahead and mark as our answer. Let me take you over to the next one now. So here is your third question. Once again, why don't you pause the video, read it, attempt it thoroughly, and then we will talk. Shall we? चलिए आइए देखें. So there are two people who are talking to each other. Mashika says we already know from polling data that some segments of the electorate provide significant support to Miss Puerta. If those segments also provide significant support to Miss Quintana, then no segment of the electorate that provides significant support to Miss Quintana provides significant support to Mr. Ramirez. Okay, so two things that we know are, number one, some segments of a particular electorate is the number of people who are going to participate in a poll, in a vote in a particular territory. So they favor P. Now the next thing that we are saying is that if these segments also favor Q, then no segment of that electorate supports Ramirez. Right? So एक तरह से ये क्या हो गया हमारा, it's a logical connective problem. So some segments support P. If those segments support P and Q both, then there is no segment in that electorate that supports R. Now, what does Salim say? Salim says, but actually as the tallest polling data conclusively shows, at least one segment of the electorate does provide significant support to both Mr. Quintana and Mr. R. So I'm saying that, okay, Salim says that, hey, there is at least one segment that supports R. So if you say if A then B, and then a person says, yeah, but B is not happening, then the implication is that A is also not happening. So in this case, if you're saying, yeah, people are supporting Ramirez, then it means that not all of these segments are supporting P and Q both together. So that's something that we can conclude. Let us go ahead and start our work. At least one segment of the electorate provides significant support neither to Mr. Quintana nor to Mr. Ramirez. We don't know. We know that there is at least one segment which is providing significant support to Mr. Ramirez. So is there at least one segment that does not support Mr. Quintana? We don't know. Mind you, even otherwise, we are talking about just some of these segments. There are segments beyond that and we know nothing about them. So this is something that cannot be determined. So I'll just stick to the layperson label, can't say. Okay, B, at least one segment of the electorate provides significant support to Miss Puerto but not to Mr. Quintana. Absolutely yes, because there is at least one segment which is supporting Ramirez. It means that there has to be at least one segment which is not supporting both of these within these segments, and these segments P is getting supported. So the question was if those segments also provide significant support to Q. So there has to be at least one segment which is not supporting Q, because when both of them are supported, Ramirez is not supported in those areas. So this is definitely true. Then C, each segment of the electorate provides significant support to Miss Puerta. Each, from some segments to each segment, can't say. D, each segment of the electorate provides significant support to Mr. Quintana. Once again, for that same reason, we can label it as can't say. E, each segment of the electorate provides significant support to Mr. Ramirez. We don't know. We just know about some segments, so how can we go to each from there? So C, D and E were relatively easy to rule out. So I think the challenge here was to figure out the logical relationships, and once you are able to look at it as an if-then relationship and you know the implications of that, this would have been relatively easier for us to identify B as our answer. So that's it for question number 3. Let me now take you through the next question. So here you go. So pause the video here. It's a tricky question. Spend some time and then we will see. Ready? Let's go. So on the assumption that administrator's assessment is correct, which of the following predictions about the effect of the refit is most strongly supported by the information given? So which refit? देखते हैं. A library currently has only coin operated photocopy machines which cost 10 cents per copy. So एक fact मिल गया. Library administrators are planning to refit most of those machines with card readers. The library will sell prepaid copy cards that allow users to make 50 copies at 9 cents per copy. Discount दे रहे हैं. Administrators believe that despite the convenience of copy cards and their lower per copy cost, the number of copies made in the library will be essentially unchanged after the refit. तो information आ गई हमारे पास. अब options पे चलते हैं. A. Library patrons will only purchase a copy card on days when they need to make 50 or more copies. Anything here that tells us, देखो कॉपी कार्ड में मिल क्या रहा है आपको? कन्वीनियंस मिल रही है और साथ में डिस्काउंट मिल रहा है, और उसमें आप 50 कॉपीज बना सकते हैं 9 सेंट्स पर कॉपी. तो व्हाई वुड यू ऑप्ट फॉर अ कार्ड ओनली व्हेन यू नीड 50 और मोर? मतलब सोचो, अगर किसी दिन यू रिक्वायर 40 कॉपीज तो उस दिन क्यों नहीं? एट द एंड ऑफ द डे आप उस दिन भी तो यू आर सेविंग 1 सेंट पर कॉपी. मोर ओवर कन्वीनियंस. इमेजिन, अब मुझे यार 2 ही कॉपीज बनवानी है. अब इफ आई वांट टू गेट 2 कॉपीज मेड, अगर मैं कैश में पे करता हूं तो आई नीड टू पे 20 सेंट्स, राइट? अगर मेरे पास कार्ड है तो मैं उस दिन आई विल बी पेइंग 18 सेंट्स. अच्छा, कॉस्ट एडवांटेज असाइड, जिस दिन मुझे कम कॉपीज करवानी है उस दिन मैं 20 सेंट का छुट्टा लाऊंगा कहां से? वेयर वुड आई गेट दैट चेंज? Change can at times be an even bigger problem. That's why we are talking about it as a convenience. So why would they do it then? This card makes sense at 40 copies. This card makes sense even at 2 copies, because of that convenience angle and the cost angle. So I don't think A appears likely. So let's just remove this. How about B? Let's check. No library patrons will increase their usage of the library's photocopy machines once the refit has been made. Cannot be determined. Why? Because it says no library patron. देखो, all that we know is that the overall number of copies will remain unchanged. लेकिन अभी imagine करो, there are 2 patrons, okay? Patron 1, patron 2. ये दोनों 10-10 copies करवाते थे पहले. Now that you have these cards in place, तो अब पेट्रन 1 ने करवानी शुरू कर दी 8, पेट्रन 2 ने करवानी शुरू कर दी 12. The total is still 20, but there is one guy who's getting more copies done, and the other guy, because he is getting fewer copies done, is compensated. So this increase is getting compensated, right? So we cannot be sure that nobody will increase. It's possible that some people will increase and some others decrease. So because that possibility exists, we will label it as can't say. See, if most of the copy cards sold in the library are used to their full capacity, the number of people using the library's photocopy machines over a given period will fall. Why? Why would that happen? हम तो बोल रहे हैं कि number of copies will remain essentially unchanged. तो इसका मतलब क्या? पहले जो लोग कॉपीज करवा रहे थे उनमें ज्यादातर लोगों ने शायद कार्ड्स ले लिए, और अगर वो अपनी कार्ड्स फुल कैपेसिटी तक यूज करते हैं तो नंबर फॉल थोड़ी करेगा, ये तो कांस्टेंट रहेगा. ये तो इसके हिसाब से तो इट शुड रिमेन द सेम, तो ये तो फॉल से हटा दो. So we already managed to rule out 2D. Revenues from photocopying will decrease unless most library patrons choose to use the remaining coin operated machines in preference to the card reader equipped ones. So D says कि यार आपका जो रेवेन्यू है वो कम होगा. ओके, इन प्रेफरेंस अगर वो यूज करना शुरू नहीं किया तो. जरूरी नहीं है यार, जरूरी नहीं है. जरूरी इसलिए नहीं है कि अब देखिए रेवेन्यू फ्रॉम फोटोकॉपिंग कहां से आ रहा है. आपका रेवेन्यू फ्रॉम फोटोकॉपिंग एट द एंड ऑफ द डे आ रहा है आपके पेट्रन्स से. आपके पेट्रन्स जो कर रहे हैं वो आपको सारे का सारा जो है प्रॉफिट ला करके देता है. राइट, चलेगा. तो इस पर्टिकुलर केस में यहां पे ये जो मोस्ट है, इस मोस्ट से बात बनेगी क्या? सारे के सारे लाइब्रेरी पेट्रन्स को ये प्रेफर करना पड़ेगा. जब तक सारे के सारे ये नहीं करेंगे तब तक आप उस डिक्लाइन को रोकेंगे कैसे? अनलेस एवरीबडी डज इट. हाँ, सो मतलब सोचिए, देखो मोस्ट की जरूरत है क्या हमें? सो लेट अस से देयर आर 100 पेट्रन्स. नाउ आर वी सेइंग कि इस 100 में से 70 को कॉइन ऑपरेटेड मशीन्स यूज करने पड़ेंगे? यार इमेजिन अगर खाली 10 करें तो भी तो ये कवर अप हो सकता है ना. तो यहां पे मोस्ट को लेके थोड़ा सा डाउट है, बट बाकी सब ठीक है, इसे रनिंग में रख लेते हैं. ई revenues from photocopying will increase if copy cards that are purchased are on average used to significantly less than 90% of their capacity. Okay, check करते हैं. Let us just put some data. So imagine कि हमारे पहले कितने कॉपीज जनरेट किए जाते थे. हाँ, how many copies were being made earlier? So let us say कि पहले 100 कॉपीज बनाए जाते थे. फॉर एवरी कॉपी यू पेड 10 सेंट्स. सो द टोटल एक्सपेंस और द टोटल रेवेन्यू वाज 1000 सेंट्स. राइट. अब अगर कार्ड बनवा लिए लोगों ने एंड एवरी सिंगल फोटोकॉपी हैपेंस बिकॉज ऑफ दैट कार्ड, तो अब आपका रेवेन्यू कितना हो गया? 900 सेंट्स. सो इट डज फॉल. लेकिन अब ये क्या बोल रहा है? अगर कॉपी कार्ड्स are used for significantly less than 90% of their capacity. तो मतलब अब ये जो कार्ड्स हैं, if they are used for significantly less, so for less than 90%, यानी कि instead of 100 copies, we are saying that they'll make, let us say 80 copies. The number can be 89, but 80 into 9 कितना हो जाएगा? 720. 80 into 9 कितना हो जाएगा? 720 cents. राइट. बट आपने पे कितना किया? कॉपीज तो आपने 80 ली, मगर आपने पे तो ज्यादा के लिए किया. वो जो एक्स्ट्रा पेमेंट आपने की थी वो तो अब आपका प्रॉफिट हो गया. राइट. तो जो एक्स्ट्रा मतलब पर कॉपी अगर आप अब कॉस्ट देखेंगे, पे तो आपने 9 सेंट्स किया वैसे तो पर कॉपी, लेकिन कार्ड में तो पेमेंट ज्यादा थी ना. और वो जो बची हुई पेमेंट है अब उसके लिए आपको फोटोकॉपी करनी नहीं पड़ रही. हाँ, तो आपकी वो पेपर की कॉस्ट, प्रिंटिंग की कॉस्ट वो सारी बच गई. दैट translates into profits straight away. Right. So इस particular case में although technically cost is what you charging them is 9 cents, लेकिन उसके अलावा जो left over money थी आपके पास उस पर्टिकुलर कार्ड के अंदर, वो भी आपकी पेमेंट हो गई. तो आपका पर कॉपी जो कॉस्ट है वो एक्चुअली 10 सेंट से ज्यादा हो गया और उसकी वजह से आपकी प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी बढ़ जाएगी. सो ई इज ट्रू एंड देयरफॉर इन दिस पर्टिकुलर केस ई इज गोइंग टू बी आवर answer. Let's go ahead and check the next question now. Hit pause, answer this, and then we will see. Ready? तो चलिए आइए देखें. From the information given, which of the following can most properly be concluded? So half of Metroburg's operating budget comes from a payroll tax of 2% on salaries paid to people who work in the city. ठीक है, तो बेसिकली शहर के अंदर अगर कोई काम कर रहा है तो उसकी सैलरी का 2% जो है वो सरकार को जाता है, तो उनका रेवेन्यू हो गया। Recently, a financial services company, one of Metroburg's largest private sector employers, announced that it will be relocating just outside the city. All the company's employees, amounting to 1% of all people now employed in Metroburg, will be employed at the new location. So essentially, there is a reduction of 1% of the employees from all the people who were employed. So matlab if there were 100 people employed, now you would have 99 employed there. Fair enough. From the information given, which of the following can most probably be concluded? A, unless other employers add a substantial number of jobs in Metroburg, the company's relocation is likely to result in a 1% reduction in the revenue. So what is reducing by 1%? The number of employees. Now, if there is a 1% reduction in the number of employees, does that mean that there is a 1% reduction in the revenue? No. That will happen only when all the employees were earning equally. Imagine there is an employee, right? This employee's salary is, let's say, $1,000. तो इस पे 2% टैक्स लगाया जाएगा. So 2% टैक्स कितना हुआ इसका? 2% टैक्स इज $20, right? And then there is this other employee whose salary is $100. तो इससे आपको कितना मिल रहा था? $2. अब ये जो 1% एम्प्लॉइज थे, इन दोनों में से कौन से कैटेगरी के थे? हमें क्या पता? अगर यहां के हुए तो 1% से कम शायद होगा, यहां के हुए तो 1% से ज्यादा भी हो सकता है, वट एवर, राइट? सो दिस 2% डिपेंड्स ऑन द पेरोल, इट डज नॉट डिपेंड ऑन द हेड काउंट. तो हमें नहीं पता कि वो 1% होगा. और प्लस अच्छा कुछ शॉर्टफॉल तो होगा, बट इवन इफ यू एड अ सब्सटैंशियल नंबर ऑफ जॉब, विल यू बी एबल टू मेक अप फॉर दैट लॉस? इमेजिन यू मिसिंग आउट ऑन $1,000 employees and now you're replacing them, or you bringing in more and more people at $100 payroll. Will even a larger number be able to offset that loss then? So that's a problem with A. B, although the company's relocation will have a negative effect on the city's tax revenue, the company's departure will not lead to any increase in the unemployment rate among city residents. Can't say. Why? Because see, at the end of the day, a company may also generate some positive externalities for the economy. So the company was not only hiring those people, there were some others who could be dependent on them. यार for example, मैं एक जगह पे अगर रहता हूँ तो मैं वहां पे रह रहा हूँ, मैं अपनी कंपनी के लिए तो काम करूंगा ही, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ मैं आसपास कहीं से सामान भी तो खरीदूंगा, ग्रोसरीज खरीदूंगा, बाल कटवाने जाऊंगा. सो those people are also dependent on me now. So if I move out, there is a possibility that those jobs can get lost, and if those jobs are lost, unemployment can increase even among the city residents. So ये भी पक्का नहीं है, can't say है. See, one of the benefits that the company will realize from its relocation is a reduction in the taxes paid by itself and its employees. We don't know. All we know is that they won't have to pay the taxes, the payroll tax at Metroburg. कहीं और जाएंगे तो क्या वहां पे have they moved there because the payroll tax is not as steep? We don't know. Are there no other taxes that they'll have to pay? Will the total not go beyond that? We don't know. तो बहुत सारे unknowns है यहाँ पे, हटा सकते हैं. D, revenue from the payroll tax will decline by 1% if there is no increase in jobs within the city to compensate fully or partially for the company's departure. Once again, just like A, it is not linked with increase in jobs. It has to match the salary that was being paid to those 1%. जब तक वो नहीं होगा तब तक कुछ नहीं कह सकते. E, the company's relocation will tend to increase the proportion of jobs in Metroburg that are in the public sector unless it results in a contraction of the public sector payroll. Okay, so what do we know? कि भाई जो largest private sector employer है उनमें से एक बाहर चला गया. So let us say that you had 1,000 jobs, 1,000 people working in all. Out of these 1,000, 1%, that is 10 people were employed in this particular company and we know that this was private. So अभी अभी जो भी रेशो अब इस 1000 में x प्राइवेट एम्प्लॉइज y पब्लिक सेक्टर एम्प्लॉइज हैं, तो इस x में जब कुछ नंबर कम हुआ तो प्योरली इन टर्म्स ऑफ परसेंटेज y का जो कंट्रीब्यूशन है वो बढ़ेगा ही बढ़ेगा, unless y also decreases. So E is definitely true and therefore E is going to be our answer to this particular question. So that's what I had brought for you in this particular session. And before I sign out, here is a group that you can join to reach me, and if you have any other issues you can discuss those with me here. It's a Telegram group, so you can scan the QR code or use this name to look for it. And before I sign out, here is a thought that I want to leave you with. The sun himself is weak when he first rises and gathers strength and courage as the day gets on. Very apt for even critical reasoning, no? यार जब शुरुआत करते हैं तो ठीक ठाक ही होता है, बहुत कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं आता है. सूरज भी जब शुरू करता है तो कहाँ पूरी रोशनी पूरी गर्माहट दे पाता है, बट जैसे जैसे वो उगता जाता है वैसे वैसे गेन्स इन स्ट्रेंथ. ठीक इसी तरह से जैसे जैसे आप क्रिटिकल रीजनिंग पे काम करते जाएंगे वैसे वैसे आप और अच्छे होते जाएंगे. सो continue to work, continue putting in the effort so that just like the sun, you can also go on and shine, right? So that's it from me today. I look forward to meeting you in the next one. Until then, have a great time solving critical reasoning. And if you need us, I'm just a message away. Take care and have a great day ahead. I'll catch you later.